Sega has done something unique, building an entire, at this point, multi-generational franchise. And it's not Sonic. Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis is a unique game because it's not base PSO2 that the community oftentimes references when describing this game, but I'm going to be real with you. Base PSO2 is holding NGS back. At some point you have to take the rose-tinted lenses off. This is just my opinion and you don't have to love it. That's perfectly fine. But as someone who studied game design and theory for 4 years and watched this game soar to some pretty amazing heights, it breaks my heart to see this game go so unloved by its developers. 2024 brought innumerable quality of life changes and bug fixes, expanded upon the game's 4 regions, and added a ton of mostly anime-related collabs. That's it. That is 95% of what Sega did for the current game and its beloved Phantasy Star Online franchise. I joined the game in February 2022, about 8 months after its global launch. At first, I didn't play much because I didn't understand anything about the game. Glances, block transfer, chat functions, etc. For an MMO, it felt pretty lonely. Fast forward 6 months, and I found myself falling in love with a game that had everything I ever wanted. The story was still new, player shop prices weren't overinflated, toxicity was minimal, and boy, does this game have a problem with toxic players now. And the game actually felt fun. Grinding for gear wasn't a chore, Meseta earn rates were abysmal, sure, but again, the player shop wasn't screaming 14 million Meseta for a makeup pattern. As someone who played primarily Pokemon and Call of Duty but with a love for fantasy worlds and fiction, NGS rapidly became a game I praised to the moon and back. Hell, I even talked about it in a discussion board post for a class I had once. I loved the game and the incredible amount of customization that came with it. Clothes, accessories, hair, and makeup patterns. What was there not to love? Definitely not the sliders and incredibly minute adjustments you can make to make your character unique. But that's about where the praise ends, unfortunately. I'm not doing this for a fancy multicolored title over my head or for clout or popularity. I'm doing this because we need to have a real conversation about the state of the game. Aside from Kuropi, who is literally the face of NGS on YouTube, love that guy, there is very little, and I mean very little, actual feedback being given to the developers of this game. When I think of content creation, I don't think of 480p gameplay that looks like it was recorded through a flip phone or... Okay, can we all just admit that the balloon bosom accessory is a problem? Like, I don't want to keep seeing 40-year-old men playing female characters that look like the Blueberry Girl from the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie. Are screenshots fun? Absolutely. But they don't make for anything more than glorified dress-up parties at the end of the day, not offering any substantial feedback or constructivism to the developers. I'm not criticizing PSO2 glorified idle fashion simulator, though this is a problem we'll come back to later. Rather, and don't get me wrong, I adore the adorable and beautiful fashion items in this game. I've filled quite the number of actual saved looks. Rather, I'm constructively criticizing the game's inability to add meaningful content that gives players something else to do besides shit-talk each other in public blocks, forcing players to hide in creative spaces where they isolate themselves from an inherently social game. I'm not saying there needs to be in-game moderation, let's not go the Call of Duty route because that's a joke, but it does need something that gets players moving. I don't want to stand around after 3 hours of Nameless City, Lucille, and LTQ, or dare I say, text-based Meseta grinds, because I'm burnt out and there's nothing else to do. Sure, Line Strike is cool, and the influx of your Alliance members during an urgent quest announcement is great. I love the alliances I'm in, especially Ship 2, because they're like family, but that's as far as that goes. Once you listen to the same droning songs from Nadara that have been on repeat every 2 to 3 hours for the last 3 years in the same WQ announcement by Crawford Iran, that's it. You either stand there and twiddle your fingers, light a campfire near someone, or dance in a line. Sorry to call some of you guys out on that one. What else is there to do? Story, sure, but after the bombshell about being number 909, essentially Safeto's 909th plaything, you get dumped into the limit assigned chapter of the story. Or as I like to call it, International Arcs Tour. It's boring, it drags on, has very little substance or tie-in to the previous 4 or 5 chapters of the story, and shows a clear lack of ideas or even direction. Chapter 7 that I'd been sitting on for probably about a year, hell, I don't even know when Chapter 7 dropped. Chapter 6 of the story bummed me out so bad, was actually a nice change of pace. I honest to God thought it was just more of Aina running around Ritem, training the new Arcs defenders. Imagine my surprise when it was revealed Zafeto never left after Chapter 5. although we did see him fly off into space after the Starless, which isn't the only story inconsistency. And with some background to Dark Falls Vile, I was kind of impressed. The story took a turn I wasn't expecting it to. You might be thinking, finally, some praise. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, but after the final chapter of the story, so far, that's it. You're done. Sure, you can run around Helfa and do more side quests that have little bearing on much else. There's some, but that's it. That is as far as content in this game goes. Yes, it's nice that we have a new-ish 12-star weapon coming out with new-ish armor, but therein lies the problem. Upgrading takes Meseta, and Meseta isn't a commodity that's easily obtainable in large quantities. If you're running anything less than the current number of stars weapon that's out, you'll eventually want an upgrade, and that upgrade, outside of events where they lower the cost, will run you through about 4 to 5 million Meseta, or more. Upgrading potentials for your Photon Blast alone is around 1 million in of itself. If you've not been stockpiling Gold Sword or Prim Armors 2 or Indie Mios, you're kinda SOL. Kinda. Thankfully, Indie Mio capsules have come down quite a bit in recent months and are between 1 and 2,000 Meseta on the player shop. Still, you're gonna need a lot of them if you don't have another weapon to use as upgrade fodder, which will save you a good chunk of Meseta if you also use a plus 100% success booster after fully limit breaking. The same concept applies for the armors as well. The Exalia weapon series was a good change to upgrading gear though. You can keep all of your upgrades in any multi-weapons you've made when you move up the chain from Exalio to Duo Salio to Tres Salio, but that brings me back to my earlier point about burnout. You need Progress Grinders and Actest Vance 1 and 2 to upgrade your gear, and a lot of it if you want to go from Exalio to Tres Salio and soon to be Acro Salio, and one of these items drops in lower quantities than the other. Now, I do enjoy a good grind on the frequent, but it does get boring and wears you out for a while. At that point, there needs to be more to do, like mini-games, Lion Strike is one idea, that players can play either together or solo. Why not add a casino-like feature where players can wager their Meseta in hopes of winning more? Add 3 categories, low, middle, and high-end wagers. If a player wants to risk it all and be a high roller, let them. If another player is afraid to lose too much Meseta but only needs another 10k or so perhaps, they could try for something on the lower end. Likewise, whatever happened to movie concerts? Why not stream something on the screens at different times of the day? It doesn't have to be a 12-hour loop with the PSO2 anime, though that was pretty fun. Perhaps you could ask the various creators you've already established a relationship with if they'd be okay with having some of their latest content shown, or scroll through community-sponsored and voted on screenshot collections. Another suggestion would be live streams of either Twitch or YouTube creators who might be streaming at the time. This one is probably a least likely option, but at least someone is trying to spitball some ideas, you know? Why not revamp the field races and add substantial rewards for completion within a set amount of time or some other parameters? Objects hit, no speed boost, time to finish, points for flips, etc. And change the courses up by having a rotation of several variants that cycles through. Sega, in terms of capital and size, you are the Activision of Japan. Surely you have some arcade games you could throw in the NGS and add an arcade-like room where players can enjoy the classic arcade games and maybe even some kind of points to redeem for simple prizes, like items in the SG or Meseta shops. I mean, Activision did this and I think it was Black Ops Cold War? I could be wrong, and players could go back and play classic Activision arcade titles. There is so much unused space in the base camps that it would be very easy to add a new building or mesh of some sort, have the player walk into it or talk to an NPC, and then that trigger an entire new level that is still technically within that region, but in its own separate space. You already do this with limited time quests and other things. You have the code. I mean, my goodness. I'm sure you guys are also playing games like Wuthering Waves right now. Take a page out of their book and try something new. I like the idea of Crimson Realm and combat zones, but it needs to stay for more than a week or two, more Lucille exploration, I guess. And even the new fictitious beam tower thing that was added, though I've yet to try it, I literally forgot existed because it's hidden within all of these sub-menus. Wuthering Waves adds new and unique challenges every so often, like the Return of the Lolo campaign, Tower of Adversity updates, and even the elusive Realm Somme Noir thing. The creativity and inspiration are there, and this game's potential, well, it used to be, remains outmatched, but players are leaving in droves. NGS is hemorrhaging players left and right. Ship 4 used to have the player population of ships 1 and 2, not combined, but now barely sees enough players log in to maybe fill one block and a small margin of another, if even that. Even your own sales forecast showed a decline in revenue you were expecting. But the same rehashed content keeps getting pumped out to us while the revival AC scratch ticket items are locked behind a paywall, hoping to attract base PSO2 players back to the game, when that part of NGS's player base has already left. Yes, the creative spaces are really cool and bring out the interior designer in a lot of people. Some of those spaces are insanely cool. But wasn't there a time when those were getting sponsored weekly in the main PSO Discord or something? There used to be something like that when the creative space was first introduced. It's a cool feature, but Archie's voice has got to change. Enough of Alvin and the Chipmunks. Aside from cute rodents, the issue with creative space is the same thing I mentioned earlier, but it also dilutes the player base. People in these spaces are seemingly not added to the total players currently in a block, and if the Steam charts are anything to go by, it's not helping retain players. People log in, see 3 people online on their friends list or alliance members page, and log off because everyone has left. This has created a cult-like social clique within the game's most populated blocks where new players get ignored, can't ask questions, don't get the help they need to understand the game, and then uninstall because they're told to either be quiet, they're being annoying, or simply can't get their questions answered. Joining alliances these days is like inserting yourself at a launch table. You were invited to join these people, welcomed in, but you don't know any of them, and they don't really talk to you or try to include you. This isn't something that can be fixed until more players return to the game and begin rebuilding the social alliances and new player-friendly atmosphere that was once so prevalent. Look, I love the coming expanded storage, new towers and standing quests, the allocation of Meseta items like alpha reactors being confined to the same areas rather than all over Alio, creativity of the creative space, item count of augments or materials in the item lab, and many of the other quality of life changes that have been made to the game. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. Eventually, the new towers will become just like Lucille Exploration or even the Trainia Cocoons in the Ordinal Tower. Yeah, remember that thing? Why? Because they remain unchanged for so long and don't get updated to reflect the level cap increases every few months to provide new challenges and gear that's worth more than 10 Meseta. Do I need to mention the stacks of Icicle Orbs, Growth Mint, and other items that were once used to upgrade gear and is now completely irrelevant? I literally just converted 3 more stacks of times 999 Growth Mint 2 to Meseta because it was taking up storage space and I didn't have a need for it. I know this video seems like an overcritical analysis of a game that isn't doing terrible right now, but nobody else wants to have this discussion. I don't know if it's because other creators have the inside word from Sega or if you've just stopped caring. But if this game is going to see success beyond 2025, big changes need to happen, and part of those big changes include story updates more than once every 12 to 15 months. I'm going to dote on Wuthering Waves some more here, because look at that game. It was in development for years, and Crudo Games had enough passion to create something truly spectacular, with more stuff to keep players satiated until the next major update, which isn't far off. Like NGS, it's another open-world game, but it's one that doesn't shove microtransactions in your face or lock essential features behind a bare minimum $15 paywall for premium. Personal shop. If NGS wants to survive, it needs to do one thing. It must become more receptive to change and willing to implement community feedback. Without this, the game will find itself with a small community of players that are okay with being nickel and dimed, same anime collabs that have zero relevance to the game, and a growing pool of toxic players that force everyone out because they aren't part of the social clique. I don't know what's next for this game, and I don't know what Sega plans to do with it beyond 2025. What I do know is that the roadmap is identical to last year's, and 2024 saw more players leaving than joining the game. If you don't believe me, look at the Steam charts here, and next time you log in, look at how full the orange bar is for the player blocks. The least populated ship, Ship 4, used to be able to fill 3 of those blocks completely 2 years ago. Now it can't even fill 1. This game has lost probably about 2/3 of its player base since I first started playing, and it's painful to see the numbers continue to drop. I've made so many amazing memories on this game, have met so many awesome people, and some not so awesome, and have laughed, smiled, and cried more than any game has ever made me. I love NGS with all of my heart, and I want nothing but the best for it. But if things continue the way they are now, this game won't even come close to challenging base PSO2's decade-plus long legacy and sentimental value it holds for players who grew up on it. I hope the game just needs new direction, and it's not a situation like Call of Duty where the studios are forced to implement unreasonable design choices and changes that are not fundamental to the game's success. On the bright side, at least Sega isn't using AI to make shop bundles and create entire maps for their games. Yet, let's hope I don't have to come back here to talk about that if NGS were ever to implement large-scale AI like that. Before you go, I just want to remind you that this video is solely my opinion, and I'm not doing this for likes or views. I want this game to succeed, and I want it to be the industry standard going forward. But with the way it is now, there's work to be done. And I hope Sega genuinely sees the good in NGS despite its flaws, because, let's be honest, no game is perfect. Now, had you asked me 2 years ago, I would have given this game an 11 out of 10. Today, however, it's quite a bit closer to a 6 out of 10. If I were a solo player, I don't think I'd log in almost every day like I do, or want to play across all ships. And that just goes to show how important the social atmosphere of this game is. I believe in the good of this game, and I believe it has a bright future ahead. unlike a certain FPS franchise at the moment. If you want to hear me rant about Call of Duty, drop a comment down below, and I'll begrudgingly force myself to play Black Ops 6 again since I'll need gameplay. No conspiracy stuff though, I'm not Blame Truth, though I do respect that man quite a lot. Okay, I think it's time to quit yapping and, hey, where do you think you're going? Put the phone down, get off TikTok, click on one of these other videos on the screen. You're doom scrolling YouTube anyways, right?